Right, listen here. Every day, 8.5 billion questions are whispered into a single machine. Where to eat, who to date, how to fix the boiler before it explodes, and almost every answer, every secret thought ends up in one place: Google's servers.
That approach has served us very, very well. This is what has allowed us to scale up 7 of our most important products and platforms to over 1 billion monthly active users each. And it's not just the scale at which these products are working. Users engage with them very heavily.
Most people never think about the fact that whilst you and I see Google as just a boring search bar, behind the curtain, it's become something else entirely. A hidden AI factory, fed by our searches, our YouTube uploads, our live location sharing, our emails, turning all of it into fuel for machines that are getting smarter, faster, and quietly stitched into every corner of modern life. Tesla is building physical AI with robots. Nvidia is making the chips. But Google, they own the questions, the answers, and the bloody universe in between. And yet, somehow, nobody gives them the credit for being the real AI master hiding in plain sight. Before we dive into this tale of secrets, power, and algorithms that know you better than your own mother, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. This bonkers story is one for the history books. Mid-1990s, Stanford University. 2 students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, working out of a scruffy little dorm setup that looked more like a teenager's science project than the birthplace of a trillion-dollar empire. They weren't thinking about Wall Street, AI, or ruling the world. No, they were obsessed with a nuisance that nobody else seemed to care about. The internet was a complete mess. Back then, trying to find anything online was like rooting through a teenager's bedroom. Papers everywhere, socks stuck to the ceiling, no chance of finding what you actually needed. Yahoo had a directory, but that was like looking through a phone book where the pages had been shuffled by a drunken raccoon. Page and Brin came up with something radically different. Instead of just counting how many times a word appeared, their system looked at how many other sites were pointing to a page. If important places linked to it, it must be valuable. They called it Backrub. Not exactly inspiring. Sounded more like a dodgy massage parlor than a revolution in technology. But this algorithm, which they later renamed PageRank, solved a problem nobody else had cracked: how to organize chaos. By 1998, with $100,000 in seed money from Andy Bechtolsheim, they officially launched Google from a Menlo Park garage. Just 2 lads, a server crammed into a case made of Lego bricks, and the sort of optimism only found in Californian sunshine. Meanwhile, here in Britain, most of us were still waiting for our dial-up modem to connect, only to be kicked off when someone picked up the house phone. Google wasn't just faster, it felt like magic. Type in a word, and suddenly the world was at your fingertips. Students, academics, professionals, they all flocked to it. And once you had people's attention, the next logical step was figuring out how to make money from it. That's where the real cunning began. In 2000, they launched AdWords, an advertising auction system that let businesses pay to appear next to search results. But unlike clumsy banner ads, these actually felt useful, relevant to what you were searching. They simply transformed advertising into useful content. Seems applicable to today's advertising, if you ask me. Instead of shouting at you like some lunatic on a market stall, Google's adverts quietly whispered in your ear, "You're looking for shoes. These ones might do nicely." It didn't feel like advertising. It felt like help, and that was dangerous. Because when advertising doesn't feel like advertising, you don't resist it. Moreover, this would lay the groundwork for the coming revolution. The money poured in. From there, Google started gobbling up opportunities like a starving man at a buffet. They bought YouTube in 2006 for a measly $1.7 billion. At the time, mocked as absurd. Who's going to watch grainy cat videos online? The critics sneered. Fast forward, and YouTube is the most powerful video platform on Earth, with billions of users uploading more content in a single day than the BBC has produced in its entire history. Not long after, they picked up Android, the mobile operating system, for a song. Everyone laughed at the idea of competing with Apple's iPhone. Now, 4 out of every 5 smartphones runs on Android. Google didn't just join the mobile revolution. They quietly made sure they were the mobile revolution. And here's the subtle genius. Every acquisition, every new product wasn't just a shiny toy. It was another pipe feeding data into the Google mastermind machine. You search, they learn. You watch a video, they learn. You get lost and open Google Maps. They learn exactly where you are and where you're going. Even when you're not consciously using Google, Google is using you. By the time they restructured into Alphabet in 2015, Google wasn't just a search engine anymore. It was the world's information system. The Garage project had become the gatekeeper of knowledge itself. And tucked away inside this empire, almost unnoticed, was a little division with an oddly dramatic name, DeepMind. But we'll get to that in a moment. For now, the key is this. Google didn't need to announce itself as a world-dominating power. It became one quietly by embedding itself into the daily habits of billions of people. While most of us were busy burning our tea or cursing at the telly, they were busy building the infrastructure of the digital age and charging advertisers billions for the privilege of being slotted neatly into our lives. By late 2022, the story of Google took an unexpected twist. For the first time in decades, people were whispering that the king might actually be finished.
ChatGPT. Maybe you've heard of it. If you haven't, then get ready, because this promises to be the viral sensation that could completely reset how we do things.
The reason? A new tool called ChatGPT. Suddenly, you couldn't open a newspaper, scroll Twitter, or step into a boardroom without hearing the same breathless prophecy. Google search is dead. Microsoft moved fast, plastering ChatGPT into Bing and Office, grinning as if they'd just stolen the crown jewels. And for once, people actually believed it. The fear wasn't crazy. Ask ChatGPT a question, and instead of coughing up 10 blue links, it gave you a polished answer in plain English. Why bother wading through a swamp of websites when you could just chat with the machine directly? Investors panicked. Analysts lined up to declare Google the next Kodak, so entrenched in the old way of doing things that it couldn't adapt to a revolution staring it in the face. And then came the infamous Bard demo in February 2023. Meant to be Google's answer to ChatGPT, it turned into a public humiliation. On stage, Bard confidently blurted out a factual error about the James Webb Space Telescope, and Google's stock promptly lost $100 billion in market value. For a company that had spent 2 decades projecting inevitability, it looked rattled, vulnerable, old. This was a threat unlike anything Google had faced before. Regulators had fined them, rivals had nipped at them, but never before had the very idea of search, the product that defined them, looked like it might vanish overnight. The media couldn't get enough of it. Google's existential crisis, the end of the search empire. AI eats its own parent. And yes, for a moment, the panic almost made sense. Microsoft threw billions into OpenAI and enjoyed its first headlines in years that didn't involve Excel spreadsheets. Every percentage point Bing might claw away from Google's market share was worth billions in lost revenue. For the first time, people dared to ask, what if the unthinkable actually happened? But here's the part the headlines missed. Hype doesn't equal reality. Google might have stumbled, but it hadn't fallen. Underneath the Bard embarrassment, the company still had something far more important than flashy demos, something Microsoft and OpenAI couldn't copy, no matter how many press releases they churned out. The data, 8.5 billion daily queries, billions of hours of YouTube uploads, the live location trails of Google Maps, the linguistic goldmine of Gmail and Docs, the beating heart of the modern internet. That was the real moat. And it was still firmly in Google's hands, so yes, the ChatGPT scare was real. It showed the world that even empires can wobble.
There's no one big magic red button we have that blows up the data center, which I think some people sort of assume exists. It's not this binary go-stop decision. It is the many little decisions along the way about allow this, don't allow this, how to predict what the risks of the future are going to be, how to mitigate those, set this new value here, things like that.
But it also set the stage for why Google, far from being finished, was better positioned than anyone else to dominate the AI age. Because while ChatGPT could answer questions, Google had something infinitely more powerful brewing behind the curtain: DeepMind. If ChatGPT was the flashy street performer drawing a crowd in 2023, DeepMind was the quiet chess grandmaster sitting in the corner, dismantling world champions while barely saying a word. Google had snapped up DeepMind back in 2014 for $500 million, a price that looked absurd at the time. Critics called it another moonshot, a vanity play. What they missed was that DeepMind wasn't about making apps or ad revenue. It was about building intelligence itself. And in 2016, the world finally understood. AlphaGo, DeepMind's creation, faced Lee Sedol, one of the greatest players in the 3,000-year-old game of Go. To put this in perspective, chess has about 10 to the power of 120 possible moves. Go makes that look like child's play. Computers weren't supposed to beat humans here. It was meant to be the last great frontier of intuition. But AlphaGo didn't just beat Sedol, it reinvented the game. In the second match, it played a move so unorthodox, so alien, that commentators gasped. Professionals later described it as beautiful. Humanity thought it had mastered Go. AlphaGo showed us we'd only been dabbling. That wasn't just a headline moment. It was proof of concept. Machines could now discover strategies humans had missed for millennia, and Google owned the team that made it possible. From there, DeepMind didn't slow down. AlphaFold cracked one of biology's greatest challenges, predicting protein structures. For decades, scientists tried and failed to solve the problem. And DeepMind's AI did it in weeks. The result? A revolution in drug discovery, biotech, and medicine, with tens of thousands of research papers suddenly possible thanks to data Google had unlocked. Then came the language revolution. In 2018, Google introduced BERT, transforming how search engines understood context. For the first time, when you typed in a complicated, clumsy query, the machine actually grasped what you meant. That wasn't OpenAI's doing. That was DeepMind's fingerprints all over your daily life.
We are using Gemini to help improve YouTube's recommendations. So we are using AI to help improve how we direct content, etc. There are good content being created using AI as well, so we're just trying to elevate high-quality content.
The portfolio of breakthroughs was staggering. By 2025, Gemini, Google's flagship multimodal model, could weave together text, images, audio, and video with seamless fluency. Veo 3 generated high-quality video on demand. Rattling Hollywood's cages, Alpha Earth started building living models of the planet itself, useful for everything from climate science to resource mapping. And DeepThink, their latest marvel, outperformed Olympiad gold medalists in mathematics, machines solving problems once reserved for the brightest humans. Here's the kicker. While OpenAI and Anthropic hogged headlines with demos, Google quietly embedded these breakthroughs into products you already used. Search question? Mark powered by transformers. YouTube's uncanny recommendations. Reinforced by DeepMind's learning systems. Google Maps' freakish accuracy at predicting traffic, fed by AI. Even the ads, yes, those useful whispers nudging you to buy, were getting sharper thanks to machine learning at scale. And the culture of DeepMind mattered, led by Demis Hassabis, a former chess prodigy and neuroscientist. The lab was stacked with the best researchers on Earth. This wasn't a Silicon Valley coding boot camp. This was a global brain trust of mathematicians, physicists, and computer scientists, all pointed at one goal: creating general-purpose intelligence. If NVIDIA built the picks and shovels, DeepMind was quietly digging for the crown jewels. Meanwhile, most people shrugged. They typed into Google, found their answers faster, and went on with their day, never realizing they were interacting with the most advanced AI systems humanity had ever built.
You understand how that would worry people.
Of course. It's the duality of these types of systems, that they're able to do incredible things, go beyond the things that we're able to design ourselves or understand ourselves. But of course, the challenge is making sure that the knowledge databases they create, we understand what's in them.
That's the hidden power. DeepMind isn't just another division inside Alphabet. It's the brain inside the machine. The reason Google isn't just surviving the AI revolution, but shaping it from the shadows. And if you think talent alone isn't enough to secure dominance, wait until you see what happens when you combine that brain power with something even scarier, the biggest data streams in human history. So DeepMind is the brain, and Google's data streams are the bloodstream, a torrent so vast and constant that no other company on Earth can replicate it. Let's start with the obvious. Search. Every day, 8.5 billion queries flow into Google's servers. That's 8.5 billion little confessions about what people want, fear, plan, or desire. No survey firm, no government agency, no rival platform has ever come close to this kind of real-time pulse on humanity. Search isn't just about websites anymore. It's a global record of curiosity itself. And here's the grumpy bit. We all volunteered the information for free, just so we could figure out how late the local curry shop is open. Then there's YouTube. 500 hours of video are uploaded every single minute. It's the largest moving image archive in history, dwarfing everything Hollywood has produced in a century. For training AI, that's not just entertainment. It's labeled human-generated content, covering every accent, every subject, every corner of life. A treasure trove of multimodal data that no startup, and not even Netflix or TikTok, can match. Maps and Android form another pillar. Billions of devices pinging location signals every second, feeding traffic predictions, store visits, and mobility patterns straight into the machine. Every shortcut you take, every detour around construction, every pub you frequent on a work day. It's all captured. Other companies dream about building self-driving car datasets. Google collects it passively at planetary scale, simply by helping people get home. Gmail, Docs, and Drive. That's a linguistic goldmine. Billions of messages and documents create the richest real-world corpus of written communication in existence, not the cleaned-up prose of books or Wikipedia. Actual messy human writing, typos, shorthand, slang, jargon. The stuff AI needs to sound human, not robotic. Stack all of this together and what do you get? A self-reinforcing flywheel. More users mean more data. More data trains better models. Better models make products stickier. Stickier products attract more users. And round it goes, faster and faster. Contrast that with the so-called competitors. OpenAI depends on licensing agreements and one-off datasets scraped from the open web, and now faces lawsuits for it. Microsoft rides shotgun with OpenAI but doesn't control the raw streams of human behavior. Nvidia sells the picks and shovels, yes, but without data to dig through. Chips are just metal. Tesla has cars and robots, but no comprehensive picture of what humanity thinks, searches, and says every second of the day. That's why Google's moat isn't just deep. It's bottomless. You can build a clever model with rented compute and borrowed datasets, but unless you've got billions of people handing you their lives on a plate every day, you'll never close the gap. And the best part, from Google's perspective, nobody even thinks of it as a trade. We treat it like utilities. You want directions? Use maps. You want a video? Go to YouTube. You want an answer? Search it. Each free service is a pipeline of fuel for the AI furnace humming quietly in Mountain View, while rivals boast about how many billions they've raised or how flashy their demos look. Google simply keeps feeding the beast. It doesn't need to hype itself as the future of AI. It is the present of AI, baked into billions of daily habits. So yes, Nvidia's chips and Tesla's robots are impressive, but the company that owns the world's questions, movements, videos, and conversations, that's the one quietly writing the script for where AI goes next. And yet, even a master hidden in plain sight faces challenges. Regulators, rivals, and cultural backlash all hammer at the gates. Which brings us to the next part of our tale. Just how hard it is to stay king when everyone's gunning for your crown. For all its data streams and world-class researchers, even Google isn't untouchable. Every empire attracts rivals, and Google's are sharper than ever. Start with Microsoft. For decades, they were the punchline. Internet Explorer so slow, it could barely load the punchline itself. Then came the $10 billion marriage with OpenAI. Suddenly, Bing wasn't a relic. It was ChatGPT with a search bar, riding shotgun on Windows and Office. For the first time in years, people actually typed Bing.com on purpose. That's not nothing. Then there's Amazon. People think of it as boxes on porches, but the real beast is AWS, the cloud platform running half the internet. Amazon has also built a multi-billion-dollar ad business right under Google's nose. If you're already shopping on Amazon, advertisers don't need to chase you across the web. They just pay to appear while you're buying. That's intent on a silver platter, and it chips away at Google's ad fortress. Apple plays a cleverer game. It doesn't need to beat Google in AI. It simply charges them $20 billion a year to remain the default search engine on iPhones. That's not a partnership, that's protection money. And regulators have noticed. Speaking of regulators, they're arguably Google's fiercest adversaries. In September 2025, Judge Amit Mehta officially branded Google a monopolist. He stopped short of splitting the company up. No drama worthy of a Hollywood finale. But the remedies cut deep. No more exclusive search contracts, mandatory data sharing with rivals, and tighter oversight of advertising. In Europe, the fines keep piling up, while India and other markets pry open Google's mobile dominance. The message is clear. Governments don't see a plucky innovator anymore. They see a utility that needs taming. And then there are the stumbles. Bard's failed demo in 2023 cost $100 billion in market cap. DeepMind's rumored military applications sparked ethical outcry. Layoffs of 12,000 workers in 2023 painted the company as ruthless. And the data centers powering all this brilliance are devouring electricity on the scale of small nations. Since 2019, Alphabet's emissions have surged nearly 50%, making net zero sound less like a promise and more like a bad joke. The threats are real. Rivals attack the business. Regulators attack the model. Public opinion wobbles between dependence and distrust. For most companies, that cocktail would be lethal. But here's where Google's story twists back in its favor. Because unlike Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, or Meta, Google has something none of them can replicate. The fusion of DeepMind's brain power with the fire hose of global data. Microsoft has OpenAI, but no real-time search queries at planetary scale. Amazon has cloud and shopping data, but not the endless stream of questions and conversations. Apple has devices, but little insight into what people actually ask. Meta has social networks, but less trust and far less breadth. Only Google owns the constant pulse of humanity, and the researchers who know how to use it. It is brain plus body, mind plus muscle, in a way no rival can touch. So yes, the enemies are loud. Yes, regulators are circling. Yes, AI shifts the very foundation of Google's ad model. But the paradox is that even in a storm, Google remains the hidden master. It doesn't need to dominate headlines like ChatGPT or fancy demos like Nvidia or Tesla. It just needs to keep doing what it's already been doing for 2 decades, absorbing the world's information and feeding it into ever smarter machines. And that's exactly why, for all the noise, Google still stands as the AI powerhouse, hidden in plain sight. Right then, hit that subscribe button, won't you? Plenty more tales of genius, greed, and madness are still to come. Check out this video.